Hey everybody, it's Troy. Hey, listen, remember when Joe Biden was elected president and everybody on the right and everybody at Fox News said that Biden was going to destroy the oil and gas industry in the United States?
Tim Stewart is the president of the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, and he joins us now. Tim, look, I think fundamentally on some level, our viewers care about oil and gas policy, especially the ones that are in the industry. But let's be realistic. The average viewer watching right now wants to know how much a decision like this is going to blow up their budget. So how much higher could gas prices rise because of this decision?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's a good time to remind everybody that since the Biden administration came in, there have been 175 different regulatory actions designed to end fossil energy production and use. They're going to feel the pain from top to bottom. Somehow the Obama administration managed to pull off almost 30 lease sales, and Trump administration was shooting for almost 50, but the Biden administration is holding just 3. They're essentially ending the offshore leasing program production by 2030. And this is why it's so important, you guys. Nearly 10% of all of U.S. oil and gas production comes from federal lands and waters. And if you end that federal production, that creates a shortfall of 1 million barrels a day in the system. A shortfall of 1 million barrels a day creates long-term energy scarcity, and prices are going to rise at the pump.
One of the first things that Joe Biden did was issue an executive order to pull the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. The Keystone XL was an extension of the Keystone pipeline, which hadn't been built yet. Well, everybody on the right, all of MAGA, everybody thought that the canceling of the Keystone XL was going to be the death of the American domestic oil production, the American oil and gas industry. That one extension pipeline, even though we have thousands of miles of other pipeline, the fact that Biden canceled that one extension has been their complete obsession that about Biden regarding Biden's energy policy. And even Donald Trump, in that famously awful debate between Trump and Biden, even Trump said that Biden, if he were president, would kill the oil and gas industry. Check this out. Do you remember this?
One final question.
Would he close down the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close down the oil
falls.
industry?
By the way, I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop.
Why would you do that?
Because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
And here's the deal. But
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do
All
give it
right.
to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President.
Well, something interesting just happened last week. It was reported that Biden just broke Donald Trump's domestic crude oil production record set in 2020. In February and March of 2020, right before COVID, the United States was producing 13.1 million barrels of crude oil per day domestically. That was a record. That was under Donald Trump. In October, November 2023, right now, the United States is producing 13.2 million barrels of crude oil per day, breaking Donald Trump's record back above pre-COVID levels. When Biden took office, it was 11 million barrels a day of crude produced in the United States. Now it's 13.2. That's an all-time record. So, no, Joe Biden did not kill oil production in the United States. Joe Biden did not stop drilling for oil. Now we are producing more oil domestically under Biden than we were under Trump. Gas prices are also down. The national average over Thanksgiving week was $3.29 a gallon. That's a 10% drop from this time last year, and 13% if you factor in inflation. So gas prices down 13% year over year from 2022 to 2023. Gas prices falling under President Biden, still not as low as they were during the height of the pandemic when nobody was driving and demand was nowhere and gas prices cratered. Still not that low, but gas prices are falling, are dropping under President Biden. So crude oil production at record highs, gas prices falling, the energy market has stabilized. At the same time, President Biden is still committed to investing in green energy technologies and renewable energy for the future. What was the other thing that Trump said would happen under Joe Biden's presidency? He said that the stock market would crash. You remember this?
Look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to move on. Mr. President, I have to move on to the next question.
They said the stock market will boom if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Well, that too turned out to be wrong. The S&P 500 stock market index just had one of its best months in a century. The S&P 500 saw gains of 8.7% in November. That's one of the best Novembers in history. That's only 10 times since 1928 has the S&P 500 saw a monthly gain of over 8%, and this is one of them. So this is historic. That amount of growth in that stock market almost never happens. The index itself is up almost 19% for the year. So the S&P 500 doing extremely well. And some analysts are predicting that the S&P 500 will break 5,000 points next year in 2024, which would be an all-time historic record for that market, for the S&P 500. So no, Joe Biden did not cause the stock market to crash. The stock market is doing incredibly well under President Biden, which means that people's 401ks and retirement accounts and long-term investments are also doing very well under President Biden, another sign of a strong economy. And there's been many signs that this economy is very, very strong, despite what you're going to hear from MAGA Republicans and what you're going to hear from legacy media. We had a staggering 4.9% GDP growth in this country in the third quarter of 2023. We're now outpacing China for the first time in 40 years. The United States is growing faster. The United States economy is growing faster than the Chinese economy. That hasn't happened in 4 decades. 4 decades. Unemployment is under 4% for the 22nd straight month. And October saw another 150,000 jobs added to the economy, which marks the 34th straight month of job growth. Not to mention that the Labor Department is reporting that wages year over year are up by 4.4%, while the U.S. inflation is currently at 3.2%, making it the lowest inflation rate of any developed G7 best economy countries in the world. Best inflation in the G7, one of the lowest inflation rates in the entire world, the United States under President Joe Biden. So Trump and MAGA basically have two things to hang their hat on when it comes to talking points against Joe Biden. The first is that he killed the domestic oil and gas industry because he apparently stopped drilling. It's their talking point that Joe Biden stopped drilling in the U.S. and made the U.S. energy independent, or made the U.S. dependent on other countries for our energy, for our gasoline. Not true at all. Domestic oil production is higher under Biden than it was under Trump, and gas prices are falling. And the other talking point, which Republicans always say against Democrats, even though the economy always does better under Democratic presidents, Republicans are saying that Joe Biden somehow crashed the stock market and destroyed the United States economy. All economic data points to the opposite. All economic data points to a strong recovery in the United States under President Biden since the collapse in the midst of COVID while Donald Trump was president. Not only is unemployment extremely low, inflation has fallen, we're adding jobs for 34 straight months, but now the stock market is also setting record highs. So just signs of an incredibly strong economy under President Biden, putting all those Republican talking points about a collapsed economy under Democratic presidents to shame yet again. For MeidasTouch, this is Troy. Remember, smash that subscribe button to keep supporting independent media, and head on over to MeidasTouch.com for all the breaking news stories of the day. Thanks all.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.